Good evening, televiewers. We are very sorry for the late start to today's edition of Prime Hour on My Media Prime, the first edition for this week, today, Monday, January the 9th, 2023. This evening, we are going to be once again looking at the Anglophone crisis 6 years since it started, looking at Anglophones as being at the crossroads. What are the possible ways out of what we have been living as the people of the Southwest and Northwest regions in Cameroon so far? We are discussing this with panelists. Some of them are still caught in traffic coming, but in the studio with me is Tamai Jarvis. Good evening. He's sitting in for some other persons who are still caught in traffic coming.
Good evening, Mr. Kum. Good evening to the peace-loving people of the Southwest and Northwest region, and a special good evening to those who are affected directly or indirectly as a result of the ongoing conflict in the Northwest region. We want to say that it is a difficult time for the nation, and we pray that we shall do justice to the topic.
Okay, also with us all the way from our studios live from Yaoundé is Professor Elvis Ngole, director of the CPDM Academy and very fervent member or militant of that party. Good evening, Professor. We are glad to have you on Prime Hour once again. That party. Good evening, Professor. Once again.
I give you good evening, Mr. Leonard Kum, and it's a great pleasure to be with you on this very prestigious platform and to share this plateau with other eminent personalities, brothers, with whom we can exchange and share our thoughts and see how we can make our modest contribution to a problem which affects all of us, a problem that we are all part of, but then a problem for which we don't have all the answers. And so we hope that through this common exchange and meeting of minds, we'll be able to make some useful contribution to a sustainable solution or to a way forward.
So we also are going to be discussing with Njone Elvis, who is the person in charge of communication within the Popular Action Party. Good evening, Mr. Elvis. We're glad to have you. Within the Popular Action Party. Good evening, Mr.
Good evening, Mr. Kum Leonard. Good evening to my co-panelists, and of course, a special evening to the people of the Northwest and the Southwest regions of this country. It's true that, like your topic already says it all, it is a very delicate moment in the history of this country. And of course, I appreciate the fact that my media gives some of us the opportunity to be able to sit and contribute our own little ideas as to what we think could be the way forward, because I think 6 years, as the topic puts it, it is too long a period of time, and I want to think that every level-headed Cameroonian, every level-headed Southern Cameroonian is sick and tired of the situation at hand already, and of course we all pray to see it come to an end so that life could return to normal in that part of the country. Once again, a special evening to all the viewers of this prestigious channel, and of course, a special good evening to the national president of the PAP party, the Honorable Mr. Njone. Thank you.
Also in the company of Esua Kisito, the president of the Southwest Youth League. Good evening, Mr. Kisito, coming all the way from Boya, Southwest Regional Capital. We're glad to have you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Leo. Thank you. Good evening to you. Good evening to the viewers. Good evening to my father, His Excellency Professor Ngole. Good evening to my very good friend Tamai Jarvis, with whom we've been on the ground since 2016 as far as this crisis is concerned. I'm happy to be here. Sorry for coming a little late. The traffic is terrible. We just managed to be here. Thank God we are here.
Yes, Senior Barrister Ashu Emmanuel is actually still caught in traffic. We hope he beats traffic to join our discussion this evening. I'll start with you, Professor Elvis Ngole. And when you look at what we have lived in Cameroon, the southwest and northwest regions so far, I'm talking about Anglophones. Is it apt for me to describe ourselves as standing at crossroads today? For me to describe ourselves as standing at crossroads today.
Yes, Mr. Kum Leonard, I think you are perfectly right to have conceived the theme in this way, because in the last 6 years, the Anglophones, who are those from the northwest and southwest regions, have found themselves in a crisis which 6 years later has placed us at what you call the crossroads. And I'm very happy that we have been joined by two personalities, Mr. Jarvis and Mr. Esua Kisito, whom I've had the fun of always listening to on this very medium, and I know they have a lot to say. But this is what I know about the last 6 years. As I said, you are perfectly right to say we are at a crossroads. We're at a crossroads because, or what do we mean by the fact that we're at a crossroads? I mean, it's an English word. When you, any human being or any animal, find themselves at a crossroads, that means you are at an impasse. You are in a state where you can't go ahead, you can't go forward, you don't know what to do, and you are almost confused, or you have become desperate, you are at a loss for options. I think that the fact that you've used the phrase Anglophones at a crossroads challenges us because, first of all, we are all Anglophones, and we are proud to be Anglophones. But we are Cameroonians first before we are Anglophones, because we are proud Cameroonians, and we know that Cameroon is a country of peoples who are from the Anglo-Saxon tradition and those from the French tradition. And both of us, as the founding fathers had bequeathed to us, we make a nation which is almost, should be the example, the good example for the whole world, because we are living together for more than 60 years, and it's only in the last 6 years that those of us who come from the northwest and southwest have found ourselves in a crisis which has brought us 6 years later to a crossroads. But what is this crossroads all about? The crossroads is this, that we've reached a stage where we, as Anglophones, we are caught in a situation of crisis, and it is we who have to honestly and faithfully acknowledge what we have been doing for the last 6 years. Has it been good for us or not? My answer is that what we have been doing in the last 6 years has not been good for us. Not that we have not had any reason, or we don't have any reason to have complained or to have expressed grievances against things that made us unhappy, or that we didn't like, or things that caused us grief and pain. I think that it's been known for 60 years that there is such a thing as an Anglophone problem, but the Anglophone problem didn't have to get us to a crisis. And because we are Anglophones, the crisis didn't have to get us to a point of a crossroads. But here we are, as your theme suggests. What then do we do with the crossroads? The crossroads is that we can't afford to be confused. We have to be honest with ourselves and with the world. And we have to ask ourselves, do we want to continue doing what we've been doing for the last 6 years and expect a different result? I think logic and science does not expect that you can get the same result, a different result, if you're doing the same thing that you've been doing for the last 6 years. And we know the last 6 years have been calamitous for the Anglophones. When I say calamitous, what do I mean? The Anglophone society, the Northwest and Southwest, because of the crisis and the attendant violence and destruction and all the heathen and things that have taken place, the human rights abuses, the Northwest and Southwest peoples, whom we call the Anglophones, have actually gone backwards, have been taken backwards. Thousands of lives have been lost. Lots of destruction has taken place. The economy has had a big hit. Innocent children have lost many years of school life because they were prevented from going to school. Lots of people have been kidnapped. And the image that the world has of Anglophones from the Northwest and Southwest now is that we are a people who kill, kidnap, destroy, violate human rights simply because we be angry over what we consider to be an injustice or what we consider to be something that we don't like. Sure, it is a right for someone to express the fact that they are not happy about something or that they don't like about something. But does that give you the right to kill, to destroy, to violate human rights, to break the laws? I don't think so. I think that I said some time ago, during the early 90s, that the Anglophone problem, for it to find a solution, the method to be used was supposed to be a method that was supposed to be constructive, logical, rational, reasonable, and so forth and so on. And that if there is any method which is not logical, which is not reasonable, which is not rational, the likelihood is that the problem will not find a solution. This is where we are. When we now find ourselves at a crossroads, as your theme suggests, that demands of us to call on our natural God-given character of honesty, our natural God-given brains of rationality, our natural God-given strengths, morals and ethics, to make sure that because of the calamitous last 6 years, we must do something different.
Okay, thank you, Prof.
And that something different is what will enable us to get a different result, a result that will be more beneficial to us, and a result that will be beneficial to all Cameroonians. Because again, as I said in the early 90s, the Anglophone problem, what has come to be referred to as the Anglophone problem, is really part of the problem of Cameroon, because it is part of a national problem. Because in solving the Anglophone problem, you have to take into consideration even those Cameroonians who are not Anglophones. So at the end of the day, the Anglophone is actually the Anglophone problem is part of the national problem. Therefore, for us to be able to get out of this crossroads, we have to first of all demonstrate that we are people of value, that we are people of virtue, that we are people of ethics, that we are people of morals, that we are people that are rational, and that we are people that are God-fearing, and that we believe in God, and that we are people of faith.
Prof,
and therefore, there's nothing wrong in us saying that the last 6 years have been calamitous, and therefore we should do something different. And that, because we recognize that the last 6 years have been calamitous, because we believe that we are Cameroonians, and being Cameroonians, we owe it to each other. And we are sensitive enough to the other Cameroonian.
Prof, no, I want to stay in Yaoundé with Elvis and Njone to look at where we are today. What would be your description of what Anglophones have lived in Cameroon for the past 6 years? Njone, Elvis, PAP.
Describing what Anglophones have lived in this country for the past 6 years, I would simply rather just say it is despicable what we've gone through and what we are still going through for the past 6 years. And it's rather unfortunate, just like the professor was already saying, it's very, very unfortunate that when we look at what is happening in this country, and particularly in the former British Southern Cameroons, you discover that the problems that we face, the difficulties our people are going through right back there, to some extent, even masterminded by our own very people. I'm sorry to say that live, but that is the bitter truth about it. And I want to think that, coming back to the topic, like it is clearly posed there, Mr. Kum Leonard, I want to think that we have actually come to a time when we must sit and be able to speak logically and try to see into it, that we propose ideas, we propose solutions that can actually drive us straight into long-lasting solutions so that we step out of this very situation. But now, when I say that some of our people have actually masterminded the pains that our people are going through, which it is not to deny the fact that this problem is a national problem, and that for us to get sustainable solutions to it, the central government in this country must be able, as well as all other stakeholders, they must be able to sit around the table and, first and foremost, Mr. Kum Leonard, accept to be historically and morally conscious and honest. There is this need for honesty as far as we Cameroonians are concerned, to be able to step out of the present crisis we are talking about. Come to think of it, it is often said, if you do not study your history to know what was, you cannot know what is or what is to be. And I want to think that we have gone beyond the time of studying our history because we know it. You see, but just that, like I say, sometimes out of some sort of dishonesty, people don't want to go by what was, to be able to understand what is, and perhaps get solutions as to what is going to be in the future. So, Mr. Kum Leonard, let me just dive straight maybe to what the topic says, to tell you that we must agree and understand that in this country, when we talk about the Anglophone crisis, it is something that we must view, to me, from already two major perspectives. We have first the political, and then, of course, the socio-cultural. From these two perspectives, we can be honest to ourselves to get into the crux of this crisis from these two perspectives. I think we can be able to propose at least ideas and possible solutions that could permit us step out of this situation, and which we all agree that 6 years after, it has overdue its stay, and that our people, and of course we, the Anglophones particularly, we are the ones paying the heavy cost and the heavy price for it all. I think that's what I can tell you for the beginning, Mr. Kum Leonard. Thank you.
League president is in the studio with us, Esua Kisito from the Southwest. Can you say Anglophones have created more enemies within the 6 years amongst themselves than getting together as a people?
Definitely the answer is yes, because like I said somewhere some time ago, when this crisis started in 2016, believe me, the population sided with the voices, in quote. And that was simply because, whether we like it or not, we as Anglophones from the Northwest and Southwest region of Cameroon had, let me not say had, have genuine problems. But my problem I have till today, which has caused a lot of enmity amongst us is the approach which we took. We went for the violent option, which is the gun, which has, of course, 7 years going. We are entering the 7th year, has landed us where we are today. It's often said when you speak bad about the rain, also speak bad about the sun. If the head of state of this country, His Excellency Paul Biya, took the option of war, I don't want to believe and think that Bakassi would have been Cameroon today. If this crisis as it came up in 2016, genuinely, if we had good coordination, I bet you, Mr. Leo, would have had much more benefits than what we have today. Truth be told, irrespective of the fact that it has caused some enmity amongst ourselves, the crisis has opened a lot of eyes. At least for once, Yaoundé can also sit now and know that the Anglophones can resist. Before this crisis, it was unusual to hear that the Minister of Secondary Education is from Anglophone Cameroon. It was unusual, except my history has failed me, that the Minister of Territorial Administration is from the Anglo-Saxon part of this country, and many others. So that is the positive side of it to an extent. It has created that awareness. The major problem I have, as I've always said to you today, is the leadership. To generate an issue is not the problem. When you generate a situation, and those who are supposed to take charge of that situation recognize the fact that they have erred, it is better for you to first of all acknowledge the fact that those persons have recognized certain issues and give some time for those things to be redressed or addressed. Taking guns is, and will never be the best option. From 2016 till date, we have lost thousands, if not, yes, thousands of souls. We hear of kidnappings, maimings. I mean, you can tell the story. When you get this, our brothers speak. I call them our brothers, of course, because they are. These guys don't live in space. They live with us in the quarters, even before they went to the bushes. Even as we speak, they are with us in the quarters. So, my issue is, we always talk of, they say we want to separate from La République, independence, and so on not. It does not come in a day. Now, you inflict more pains on the people you struggle to liberate, and you think that you are creating a convivial environment for oppression. It's not possible. 95% of those who have been kidnapped in this crisis are Anglophones. At the end of the day, you kill your brothers, you kill your friends in the name of, I want to hurt Yaoundé. That does not hurt President Biya in any way. Yes, it might touch him as the head of state because he has a duty to protect the sovereignty and the people, which is an oath he took. But at the end of the day, if you kidnap 100 persons and 98 are Anglophones, who are you hurting? You are hurting the same person you are struggling to protect. At the end of the day, if you eventually have that situation, who are those persons you will govern? Where are we? We are at Crossroads. From 2016 to 2022, we have already entered 2023. If you take your calendar and you do simple mathematics, you realize that we've had more than 300 Mondays from 2016 to date, which means that only Mondays alone have taken us a complete calendar year. I don't want to talk about the other 1 week, 3 days, 4 days lockdown. it boils down to, they say, to a situation where, assume that you are a businessman and your business is closed down for a year. Because if you put all these Mondays together, it's a complete year, which means that the normal and average businessman in the Northwest and Southwest has not operated his business for a complete year. Economically, the impact is devastating. Where are we today? The Southwest, for instance, before this crisis, used to be one of the bread baskets of this nation. You could not mention cocoa, coffee, banana, rubber, palm, you name the rest, without mentioning the Southwest. But where are we today? CDC is just barely managing to operate. Where is palm? At the end of the day, who are we killing? We are killing our own selves. The educational system, which we said was being francophonized, and that we don't want schools in the Northwest and Southwest regions of Cameroon. What happened? Most of the families, parents, sent their children, their relatives, their brothers and sisters across the Mungo to study. And what is the eventual situation? We keep enriching the persons we see we don't want to belong. So, if we put all this together, you realize it happened about not up to just some few days ago in Njone, in the Northwest, where the population, which used to be for the separatists, is now against the separatists.
It's somewhere around with the Kum.
Yes. Catching the separatists and handing them over to the military. That's to tell you that the table is turning. Okay. And I think that it is the best time for the secessionist leaders to see that this thing is already backfiring. Let's put ourselves together and approach dialogue and let the state on its part open its hand.
Yeah, when I also talk about Crossroads, there was a labeling that the Rice La République, the Rice Ambazonia, and that La République was the enemy. Where we now find most of those who came from the Northwest and Southwest regions being given reception, very warm reception, and they have been living here for more than 5 years. Are we not at Crossroads because we thought that, okay, that was fire, and then we are well received, and don't we see ourselves actually having a rethink about where we were going, or what notion we were told about the people of these other 8 regions?
When we look at the conflict in itself, I would say that there was that notion from the beginning of the conflict that it was an Anglophone against a Francophone. But when the conflict actually took up arms, a lot of people became aware that it was not an aspect of the fact that the Francophones hated the Anglophones, it was an aspect of governance. And if you see when in 2018, when the conflict actually metamorphosed into full-blown armed conflict, you saw the number of Anglophones, or I don't like calling Anglophones because you saw the number of people from the former West Cameroon or North and Southwest who moved into the other 8 regions. They were warmly received, and some had places to stay. You had donations from the churches of the East Cameroon. You had donations. You had IDP centers. People or chiefs were even in Koto. You had chiefs that
palaces were erected.
Yes, yes. So chiefs erected to welcome. And there's one chief, I've forgotten his name, Aram Pekawit or something like that, that created a big space.
It's in Bepanda.
Yeah, Bepanda. That created a big space for Anglophone IDP. That's to tell you that there is love. Now the problem we had was governance, and I keep saying that the Anglophone community themselves, those who are fighting for this conflict, who call themselves the secessionists, are missing a point. And likewise, some of the architect of those who are beating the drum of war, that they are also missing the point. We have 2 radical extremists here. We have those who have picked up arms and some few members of government. So we have 2 people. So we have these 2 people to deal with. And these 2 people are basing their mind on wrong prototype. I'm happy Professor Elvis Ngole is joining us here, and he's someone who is versed with political science. And I want to borrow this, and if I'm wrong, he should correct me, from John Henry Clark, a famous Pan-Africanist, an African-American who is a Pan-Africanist. John Henry Clark said, when African countries got their independence, they inherited structures from their colonial masters. And in that he said, none of these structures can actually help Africans to grow. And that is why if you see this conflict, we are fighting because of the structures we inherited from the colonial masters. We inherited the modern state, and we inherited the fact that it must be this way, it must be this way. And he said that no civilization has known true development in the language of another. In one context, what do I mean? I mean that we are fighting about the fact that we should restore 1961. But the current reality today is not 1961. The current reality today is the fact that people of the Northwest, Southwest, Littoral, West region need to come together and form a common identity that best describes who they were prior 1884 and who they should be now that we are looking at a change in dynamic where the world has changed. The Anglophones themselves, from the beginning of this conflict, some of those who blew the trumpet of war actually saw the Amber Boys as our voices. Remember that from 2018, it was our voices, our voices, our voices. And I said this year that the tides will change if they keep beating the same trajectory they have been going, that it should be independence or nothing else. Now in 2019, rhetoric changed. You started hearing those voices, no, the voices, 2019. Now in 2020, it moved from the voices to those voices. Now in 2022, it now moved to terrorists. Some are calling them now terrorists. The same persons who started by saying our voices, the voices, those voices, and now terrorists. That's to tell you that there's a lot of pain in the land, and the pain has been caused by two factors. Like Esua said, that if we had Bakassi today, it's because of dialogue. It's not because we went full-scale war. And if we have this conflict today, it's because of the fact that at the end of the day, within the government bench, we have extremists who are fanning the drum of war. And the Anglophone side also, we have extremists who are fanning the drum of war. And anybody who comes on national TV and tell you with all arrogance, pride, that dialogue should not be used, that person has never felt the pinch, or has not felt the pinch of this war. Because if you have seen the bitterness of a mother in Monya who hears the sound of gun and goes down on the table, you see an elderly man who hears the sound of Ambadikam and run to his house to close the door, you see the pain of these people, then you cannot come on national TV and you say that dialogue should not be. The same way to those who are extremists, who are fanning that there should not be ceasefire, is because they have not felt the pinch of a student who is shot dead, whose mother had him as the only son. They have not felt the danger of those who hear the sound of gun and goes to the hospital. These are the two extremists. And which way do we have? We are at crossroads. We are at crossroads because there comes a time in life where you have to sit and look at where you are coming from, where you are now, and where you are going to. Where the rest of the world is moving forward with development, where the rest of the world is moving forward to restructure its society, to build digital economy, to build a resilience economy. We are at Akimbo in one spot, looking at taking us back to the structures we inherited from the colonial masters. And I want to say this, that when we fight on these structures that it must be independent or nothing else, I ask myself few questions, and it is a rhetorical question. If we are given independence today in the Northwest and Southwest region, under which leadership are we going to rule? Under which culture are we going to preach? A culture of violence? Under which structures are we going to put in? The structure of calling everybody blacklegs who disagree with you? The Anglo-Saxon culture, we're told, is a culture that believes in the force of argument, not the argument of force. But today is the other way around. It's the argument of force. You must use gun on me, or if you are against the statement made by some regime barons, they call you a terrorist. And I want to say this, that no Cameroonian is less or more of a Cameroonian than another. We are all Cameroonians who live as Cameroonians, who die as Cameroonians. There is one thing I always ask every Cameroonian, that when you sing the anthem of the nation, O Cameroon, cradle of our fathers, thy holy shall reign in amidst the now repose. And there's a point that there in that anthem I love so much, that worth no tongue can tell, and we will live to your name ever true. What worth are you saying no tongue can tell? Is it the worth of preaching violence, hate, bigotry, divide? We will live to your name ever true. Is it that ever true that you are saying that we should not dialogue? And I hear people, the separatists on the other side also say that it is either independent or nothing else. If you look at the anthem, the so-called, they brought it, there is peace, but it is contrary or repugnant to what they are doing on the ground. So I want to say that, as John Henry Clark said, that when we inherit structures from the colonial masters, we cannot know true or real development. Look at some African countries: Somalia, conflict; South Sudan, conflict; Sudan, conflict; Democratic Republic of Congo, conflict. You come to Mozambique, conflict. You come to Cameroon, conflict. You go to there's these other African countries, it's conflict. Why? This conflict is caused because we are basing our mind on inherited structures. All of these are looking at inherited structures, and the moment where we keep aside inherited structures and focus on a new identity called the identity of McDermott, simply means that making use of the best of our past and bringing up a future that can best define who we are. We are not Anglophones, we are not Francophones, we are Cameroonians. We are by extraction people from Northwest and Southwest. Today it's common to hear they say, okay, you are Anglophone, you are Francophone, you are Lusophone. My mother is in the village, she can barely speak English, but I will not call her an Anglophone, I call her a Cameroonian. So when we are fighting within this context under the mind of Anglophone, I think that we must understand that the ordinary Cameroonian from Douala doesn't hate someone who comes from Boya, who comes from Bamenda. So we must look at what unites us more than what divides us. What unites us more is poverty.
Okay, I was basing my point on the fact that Anglophones who previously were told that, okay, these guys are enemy, they are living peacefully this side of the Mungo. But are we not also at Crossroads, Professor Elvis Ngole, looking at the transfer of wealth that has moved this way? We have seen the big guys in Bamenda and the big guys in Boya now investing heavily in Yaoundé and in Douala. We've seen most of these schools that are now being erected this way, and most of our brothers, the diaspora, so many of them are coming into town. So many of them are in Douala as we speak. Rather investing here, are we not actually at crossroads that we are hoping to develop our regions, the Southwest and Northwest, but are rather fostering development this way?
Really, Mr. Kum, I mean, this is really what the crossroads is all about. The crossroads is really a calamity. The crossroads is really a disaster. The crossroads is really a sort of, I don't want to say bad luck because that doesn't sound like a good English word, but it is a sort of sad state that we should fight to come out of, because Mr. Tamai Jarvis and Mr. Esua Kisito, I mean, I agree with all that they've said, and they said earlier. You know, when Mr. Kisito talks about the fact that there is enmity amongst us Anglophones, that is the crossroads right there. How can it be possible that because there is a crisis, which is the result of actually a problem which has lasted for 60 years or so, that there has to be enmity amongst the people who have no reason to be enemies to one another? We've had a lot of insults, a lot of blames, a lot of blackmails about each other. Mr. Kisito talked about the leadership, and I'm sure what he refers to here is those Anglophones who claim to be leaders of the Anglophone community have actually misled us into this crossroads, whereby, you know, leadership is not something you arrogate to yourself. Leadership is not something you force. Leadership is earned. It is constituted, and it is backed by law, by tradition, by norms, and so forth. But what we see in the Anglophone community in the last 6 years, in the North and Southwest, is that you have those amongst us, especially those amongst us who are in the diaspora, who think that by virtue of the fact that they reside in the diaspora, a diaspora which all of us have been part of for some time, they think that they have the merit and they have what it takes to be Anglophone leaders, and have misled a lot of people into believing that what they say is right, and therefore people should follow them. But I recognize that the Anglophone diaspora is a diaspora that is full of men and women that are respectful and respectable, and a lot of them are doing a tremendous and a wonderful job. And I have a lot of esteem for the Anglophone diaspora. But it is this group or this category of us who think or have arrogated to themselves the position of leadership, whereby they've misled everybody. And in this adventure, there have been lots of insults. There's been a lot of enmity. I agree with Mr. Kisito. And that leadership is actually a fake or false leadership. And that leadership has misled us in this crossroads into thinking that there has to be hatred amongst us, particularly between the Cameroonians of Anglo-Saxon extraction, or the Anglophones, and Cameroonians of the French extraction. Whereas, as Mr. Tamnjong said earlier, really, we are one and the same people. We are brothers and sisters. There is really no anthropological or genetic difference between Ngole, who comes from Kupe Manenguba, or Ngole, who comes from Vuri, or Ngole, who comes from another part of Cameroon. There's no genetic, no anthropological difference between us. So there cannot be hatred, and proof of that is that, as you yourself said, Mr. Kum Leonard, earlier, 90+%, if not 99%, of all the internally displaced persons from the northwest and southwest who are Anglophones reside in the other regions of Cameroon that are not English-speaking regions, and they are welcomed. There is warmth, there is solidarity, there is brotherhood, there is fraternity. That is Cameroon right there. Our founding fathers bequeathed to us a Cameroon of brotherhood, a Cameroon of solidarity amongst ourselves, across tribes, across languages, across religions, and so forth. And you see it here that out of the 700 or 800 internally displaced persons from the north and southwest, almost all of them, 90% plus, are residing happily in the other non-English speaking regions, and they are welcome, and there is fraternity, and there is solidarity, and there is concord. Sure, we know that their situation is precarious because there is a lot of poverty, and there's a lot of loss of self-esteem, and families are broken. We understand that, but this happens in every conflict situation. But we should be very happy with our brothers and sisters from the other regions of Cameroon who have welcomed our fellow, our brothers from the northern and southwest who have found themselves as IDPs in these other regions. That is a Cameroonian quality that the world admires. And because of that, it is difficult for anyone to talk about hatred between Anglophones and Francophones, because there is none. But this false leadership has led us into believing that there should be, or there isn't, because we see that Cameroon is a land of brotherhood, a land of solidarity, and this is where it should be. You talked now a few minutes ago about the fact that because of this flight of people, internally displaced persons from the northern and southwest into the other regions, what we see now is also that there is capital flight, there is investment flight, and there is all kinds of flight that is moving from the north and southwest into the other regions. Not that there is anything necessarily wrong with that. Investors are free to invest anywhere, but because the IDPs are mostly found in the other regions, investors, or those who have capital, find it convenient for them to invest where these people have gone to. but it's still Cameroon. But again, that should tell us that the other Cameroonians who are in the other regions have never been enemies to us. They have never shown any hatred for us. In fact, they have shown the contrary. They have shown love. They have shown brotherhood. And we should be proud of our Cameroonianness, that we are Cameroonian, where a Cameroonian can live in the northwest and southwest and move to the center, or to the south, or to the east, and or to the north, or to the west, and or to the littoral, and he or she is welcome like a brother and sister. Look, Cameroon is a country in Africa unlike any other country. And those who claim in their falsehood that, oh, there is enmity, there is hatred, or who want to create enmity or hatred, I think they are false, and that is false leadership, that is a false message, that is a false narrative, because there is no such thing. We understand that, yes, there are problems none of us can refuse. We all agree. But these problems did not start in 2016. These problems have been there since the beginning of the nation. And we have to give credit where credit is due, that successive regimes, beginning with the First Republic under the first president, President Ahijo, and now since President Biya came to the Supreme Magistracy, they've been trying to find solutions to these problems. We just went through a major national dialogue, which was, to me, and I was honored to have taken part in it, an approach, a governmental approach, in order to find solutions to these problems. Sure, we are not perfect, but I think that we have to give credit where credit is due, that that was a good thing, that the government took that decision to find a way to allow people to freely to express themselves and find a way out. And I'm very glad to see that the recommendations from these major national dialogue have taken us further, where we can begin to see light at the end of the tunnel. We see that decentralization has become accelerated. Regional leaders who are elected by the people of the various regions are in place. They are taking decisions. There is a special status that has been granted by virtue of the fact that that was one of the major recommendations of the major national dialogue. This is something we didn't have before. We are not saying that we are perfect and that we have all the answers. But we must know that each time a people are confronted with problems, honest enough to know what to do with those problems, the worst thing that they can do is to find themselves at a crossroads where they become enemies to one another, where they are engaged in false leadership, where they don't mind that their image is going down, where they want to create false hatred or false enmity, whereas in fact we are a country of love, we are a country of solidarity. We hope that after 6 years, we have to begin to see that if we continue at this road, we will be wrong, we will be a laughing stock, and we will not have helped ourselves. We would rather think that after 6 years, or as I think it's Mr. Kisito who said, it's already the 7th year because we're in 2023, the time has come for us to take a different leap, a different path. And that path must be a path away from what we have been doing in the last 6 or 7 years. That path is a path of rationality. That path is a path of peace, and peace which comes from the heart.
Prof,
peace which is logical, which is reasonable. That path is a path which makes us human towards one another. That path is a path of love. That path is a path of reconciliation. That path is a path of honesty, of good faith.
Yeah, Prof.
Of ensuring that we should know that we are not the first to have problems. But again, we are not perfect. But we are willing to be humble and honest enough to say it's a path of love.
Prof, we'll be getting back to you. We've just been joined by Senior Barrister Ashu Emmanuel, the National President of the Reform Party. He was caught in traffic. Thank God he's here. Now, Senior Barrister, we're glad to have you. We are looking at this caption that Anglophones are at crossroads. We've been looking at other aspects of world transfer, the reception accorded Anglophones, this part of the nation, and a host of other things. Now, where would you place the ongoing crisis 6 years after? Do you think that things are still on the rails and things are moving as planned from the beginning?
Well, Mr. Leo, well, I don't know what you mean by as planned. Planned by who?
When you set out for a journey, you should
planned by the people who started the struggle.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, thank you for the question. 6 years on, I think that in the first place, nobody planned for this struggle, for this crisis.
Okay.
It was imposed on us. We never planned for it. But after 6 years of military tussle, I think it is time for us to see that that is not taking us anywhere. Well, it has taken us somewhere, because for the first time we are hearing our head of state talk of negotiations. For the first time. So I think we have moved from the hard line to something softer, which people have been asking for, and we just have to await the materialization of the negotiation to see whatever is going to come out. That apart, if the government doesn't negotiate, then we will be left with a people who want peace, but they are faced with war. So that is the problem. It's not a matter of our personal will. I, as a politician, I want that peace should reign throughout the country so that I can go out convincing people to vote for my party and vote for me. But that is hampered by this war that is raging, and we have to do with what we have in our hands. So, as a politician, I will only ask people, if you cannot get peace, try to make a way out of the bad situation, because in this crisis situation, we have CPDM that has been coming out with results each time claiming that they have won elections. So we shouldn't give them the opportunity to do that again. If there is any election now, please go and vote and register massively, because the registration, voter registration, is very important. You have seen what the small CPDM minority that has been participating in the election has cost. They have been carrying these decisions in our name. They decide and impose on us what we don't want. So I think that it is time for us to carry out these elections ourselves. If there is an election, please register massively. I want to stress on this. We should be careful not to scatter our votes, because when you scatter your votes, I know many people who want to say, okay, I am CPDM. Please, in 40 years, what have they done for you? Put your vote into Reform Party, the party that has a plan of action that you can see with your eyes. If we are in power and we don't enforce it, we don't bring the change that we are announcing, hold us to task, because we are telling you that we can end unemployment by creating jobs from our own means. We don't need foreign investors. We are not joking. We can tell you that we can bring an end to the corruption that is raging in the country. We say we can bring an end to the misappropriation of public funds that has become rampant. And you see, we are not hiding anything. We are telling you clearly, put your votes inside Reform Party so that you can at least have some party that can give you real hope, instead of giving your votes to some people who have been in power for 40 years and all you see is development being sent to the south. Please be wise this time. Vote wisely. Put your votes inside Reform Party. That is not only headed by your son, but it's a party that is also has national representation. It's not like the case where they used to tell you that. Yes, sir.
Is that the topic of today?
You are asking the way forward, sir.
No,
wait. You are talking of the way forward. Is that not the way forward?
Yeah, but we are coming to the way forward.
That's the way forward.
Has completely delved into.
No, I'm not there. Look, you see, the question is which way forward?
No.
And I am saying that.
On the Anglophones at Crossroads 6 years after.
You mean to say the which way forward was the second part? I didn't know that. I thought that it was part of the same question. Anyway.
Yes, come briefly before we get back to your own.
Yeah, I was going to say that for if I've not mixed up issues for the first time, I'll agree with him on one aspect, the aspect of electoral activities. especially the youths, they shy away from politics and voting with the popular saying that what will change. Forgetting to know that change is the only constant thing in life. And to queue up with what he is saying, that the population should go and register massively, we are launching a campaign, a regional campaign soon, for massive registration, especially of the youth on the electoral calendar, which is very important. We cannot be talking about change, and yet we are running away to engaging to the thing that can bring change. It's only the ballot box. But I want to use this opportunity to challenge Barrister. We know that the CPDM is well grounded, whether I like it or not. For you, if you guys of the opposition are not selfish enough.
Are you a CPDM militant? Just to...
No, sir. Okay. I belong to no party because I had an association which is apolitical. So we will urge you to form a coalition if you guys really feel that you are not selfish enough. If you have the interests of the people at heart, you guys should form a coalition. We just between the Northwest and Southwest, we can have about 8 political opposition parties, if I'm not mistaken, or more. That if you guys are really serious and have the interests of this nation at heart, and that nobody is selfish, I must be the president, form a coalition, and then we'll see that you people are serious and will support you. As far as my association is concerned, the Southwest Youth League, permit me bring it in here. We support no party, but we have over 4,600 registered members. The party we shall support is that party which will prove to us that it has the people at heart. We are ready to work with any political party. But you people should prove to us that you don't have your selfish and personal interests. Because it's very easy and nice, of course, easy going to criticize the party in power. But prove to us that you are one by first of all forming a coalition. Then we'll know that you are serious. And we shall give you the votes.
Okay. I'll go over to you, the National Communication Coordinator for the PAP party in Yaoundé, Mr. Njone Elvis. Now, are we not also, I'm talking about Anglophones, not at Crossroads, are they not at Crossroads because there's so much hope on the diaspora has not paid off? So many persons believed on the US Congress, US Senate, the EU Parliament, and so many similar instances which have not paid off this far. Why do you think the international community has been growing the more indifferent to what is happening in Cameroon? Similar instances which have not paid off this far. Why do you think the international community has been growing the more indifferent to what is happening?
Well, Mr. Kum Leonard, I think so far, like you rightly say, initially our people turned some sort of believed so much in our brothers who are back in the diaspora. But I think there is an error that the masses commit here or committed, which is that of the error to have believed so much in our brothers in the diaspora. Because there is one thing which the professor said, and I agree with him on that, that our brothers of the diaspora, they want to give us, or they give the people that impression that the moment you you become too intelligent, and so every idea that comes from you, it is either we take it or we leave it. So you see someone with whom you were here 2 days back, and the moment he travels, you must accept his idea, or you are your own idea, your own opinion doesn't count. Which honestly, like I always like to remind that I have often disagreed with many of them, and I will even shock them by saying, Mr. Kum Leonard, that I don't even think that even if, like Tamnjong was saying, even if this independence were to come today, the question is, who will even be the person to lead? Because coming back to it is to answer the second part of your question as to why the international community maybe has been lukewarm about the whole thing. When you start a fight, when you are clamoring for something, and at the end of the day, you have not laid any concrete path that you yourself you are to follow, and we have more than 5, 6, 7 leaders, all of them declaring themselves presidents to a nation that they have not yet captured, then it shows even the international community that they themselves were never prepared for the fight. They themselves are not even quite genuine and serious as to what they are doing. It is true they will tell that they are not obliged to fight under the same canopy, but I want to tell you, Mr. Kum Leonard, that the division that we have seen amongst the leaders in the diaspora, or the so-called leaders of the diaspora, I want to think that it contributes enormously and even makes it very, very difficult for any country out there or any international organization to want to step in and propose any concrete solutions, because at the end of the day, when you talk with A, B tells you that I do not align with that. You talk with B, C tells you that I do not align with that, and it becomes very, very difficult. But far from that, Mr. Kum Leonard, I would like to say, coming back to the topic again that is asking what a sustainable way forward that we can have for, to this crisis. I would like to say one thing. I started by insisting on the idea of what? Honesty. My namesake, Professor Ngole, sitting right next to me here, he said certain things which I will certainly not want to totally agree with him on, because he has been laying so much emphasis on Cameroon being a country that is hospitable, loving, caring, and all that. I agree on that. We should not mix up things. The problem between the southern Cameroonians has never been the problem between the common man and the lay common man in East Cameroon. The problem we are facing is an Anglophone problem that is orchestrated by the regime in Yaoundé, beginning from the Aijos regime from the 60s. That is one thing we should bear in mind. And that is why I said, if we want a way forward, the very first thing we need to understand and do is to first of all be very, very honest to ourselves when it comes to proposing solutions to this particular crisis. Because come to think of it, I do not agree, I do not accept when they keep reminding Cameroonians of the so-called major national dialogue that took place, like the professor was just proposing here a few minutes ago, because to me that was never anything organized out of any honesty. It was something, it was a farce, and I think professors today here must be able to, he should be honest to accept that that is what it was and take it back to his regime, to his to Mr. Biapol. Let them understand that Cameroonians are still expecting a genuine dialogue where all stakeholders in this crisis will be brought around the table so that each person can sit and express himself freely, and of course we shall be and we focus only on what can help us move forward. Now, secondly, I said from the onset, Mr. Kum Leonard, that when we talk about the crisis again, I said there are two perspectives on which we can look at it: the political and the socio-cultural. Talking about the political, there was already some sort of a mafia, permit me to use that term, right from right even before the so-called independence or the unification, beginning with the UN, since they totally outrightly kept out any possible option for outright independence. But since we find ourselves where we are today, politically speaking, what are we supposed to do? I disagree at this point, therefore, with Mr. Tamnjong, who thinks that we cannot be going back to 1961. I said from the onset, you must study your history to know what was, to be able to know what is. Unless we go back to the drawing board, unless we go back to 1961, it becomes difficult, because it will look like we want to solve a problem, but without wanting to go back to the root cause of that particular problem. It is a very difficult thing to handle from that perspective. It is like trying to catch a snake from the middle. It is very, very dangerous. We must go back to 1961. What happened in 1961? And from 1961, what did not go well along the way? At what point in time did the errors start coming in? That is how we need to look at it, to be able to propose solutions that can be long-lasting. And of course, still to be able to resolve this issue, Mr. Kum Leonard, there is this issue of collaboration. And when I talk about collaboration here, I will be talking about collaboration between the regime in Yaoundé, headed and incarnated by Mr. Biapol, and of course our brothers in the diaspora. When the two are fighting, they should understand that they need to collaborate. And when I talk about collaboration here, what do I mean? If we are brothers and we think that we love ourselves and we love this nation, if Yaoundé claims to be fighting for the common man, and the Ambazonian leaders are claiming to fight for the common man, who at the end of the day has turned out to be the #1 victim, let these two protagonists sit on the table and be able to agree what is it in my culture or in your culture that I do not like, that offends me. It is only when people will let you talk from that perspective with all honesty. I should be able to clearly tell you what I do not like in your government and system and management, and you tell me what you don't like in mine, such that together we can come to some sort of a compromise where I can be able to give out some concessions and also take something. You see, but when people take their extreme stance, Yaoundé thinks that the form of the state is non-negotiable and it must be the way one man has decreed it, while the Ambazonians think that it is either independence or nothing. Then believe you me, we are not going anywhere. We should learn to dialogue if we truly think that we love the common man which we all claim we are fighting for. And to continue in life,
Mr. Elvis, you are talking about concessions, but I think that this whole stuff started, and then there were meetings in Bamenda. Ministers moved to Bamenda, I'm sure 2-3 times. That was a move from Yaoundé to Bamenda, which they will tell you was a concession. And then there was a creation of the common law bench at the Supreme Court, which they will say it was a concession. Common law department at ENAM, which was a concession, and the acceptance of even organizing a major national dialogue, which means that there was an acknowledgement of the existence of a problem. Now, how do we understand when you say nothing, the positions have not shifted from both sides, when we know that some moves have been made from the government bench? Yes.
That more than 700 prisoners have been released. Please, we of the PAP, we have often said, and we will insist on that particular point, that when we talk about the release of prisoners, Professor, every single South Cameroonian who is in jail today, connected or directly or indirectly concerned about with the Anglophone crisis, should first and foremost be released. But that is the first thing.
That does not negate those who have been released.
No.
They have been released.
Professor, if 700 have been released, it doesn't count, but we still have thousands. Yes. And of course, the thousands that are in jail, the question is, what are they doing behind bars? When we know that some people are there and they have not been officially charged of anything, but some have died in jail, and it goes along with Professor to provoke more anger out there in the southern Cameroons. Secondly, Mr. Kum, to come back to your question, you said the government has done some concessions. Please, government cannot sit in Yaoundé, the regime cannot sit in Yaoundé and send ministers to go and talk with people when at the same time the government in itself does not officially recognize that there is an Anglophone problem. Secondly, when you go to the northwest, for instance, or the southwest, and you end within the capital city, Bamenda or Boya, and you talk with the few class of people you call the political elite, have you gone down to the masses to know exactly what they want? And talk about the elite here, I will point out one thing to you. We have a wrong definition in our Cameroonian context as to who an elite is. We believe in our context that an elite is...
Let me come back. I'm coming back to you, Senior Barrister. I really want us to be clear here that nothing has been done since the start of this crisis. And when Mr. Njone says they met with some persons in Yaoundé or in Bamenda, no, in Boya or in Bamenda, and then now says that they should discuss but with separatist leaders. These same leaders are not the entire population.
Mr. Kum, we have to be honest to ourselves. I think that being an opposition leader does not mean that you should kick against everything that comes on the table. We should be honest to acknowledge that the government has tried. They may not have tried as much as we want them to try, but they have tried. They have carried out a lot of things. They've done a lot. You mentioned just a few, but you did not mention the Musonge Commission, yes. The Bilingualism Commission. You didn't mention that one. They have done a lot. In fact,
the minister of territorial
administration. We had never had any minister, any Anglophone minister occupying that type of position. No, I think we should be honest to ourselves. You see, I remember even Mr. Musonge was asked, the Musonge Commission, not the one of bilingualism, was asked to go around and meet the population. He is talking of elites. We still have those videos of the meetings in Kumba. Those were not meetings with the population, with elites. It was meetings with the grassroots. and the people spoke their minds. In Bamenda, it was the same thing. You cannot say nothing has been done. No, that is not true.
And Mr. Leo, to be very honest, these are some of the things which make me totally hate some opposition parties. Because they feel that because they are coming from the opposite camp, they should criticize everything that the state does. I want to appreciate Barrister Ashu for being frank. If an opposition party member comes on television and says categorically that the state has done nothing, then it's a shame. We have to say it's a very big shame. I'm sure he should be abashed by what another president of an opposition party has just said here. You cannot sit and say that the state has done nothing. We have cited a lot of things which did not exist. But remember when I had the opportunity to talk at the first instance, I started by saying that irrespective of the fact that we are criticizing that the boys have exaggerated, what they have done so far has caused the government to implement a lot of changes within the system. And I cited those two cases, for instance, that no Anglophone has ever had the opportunity to be the Minister of Territorial Administration in this country. Secondary education, which is one of the largest ministries we have in this country. We've cited the Bilingualism Commission. I mean, you cannot say that for this problem to be solved, the head of state has to start by releasing everybody. It is virtually impossible. In other words, you are telling us that because the head of state has the prerogative, the constitution gives him that power to release persons by presidential pardon. If he goes ahead and does those things, you are giving room for people to commit continuous crime, thinking that the head of state, of course, in his magnanimity, will automatically release people. Please, when we come on television to preach and to say things that will affect change, we should say things the way they are supposed to be said. Stand on television as an opposition leader. Tell me that the government probably has not met up with what you expected. That would be understandable. But to come clearly and say that the government has done nothing, it's a very, very big shame. It's a shame.
Now,
thank you, Mr. Kum, for giving me back my time. Let me come now to my able friend here, who said earlier that his organization will only support a political party that is going to bring to display what they are capable of doing by bringing in a coalition. In politics, what you support is not numbers, it's ideas, and the ideas in politics are displayed, they are materialized by a plan of action, which other people call the manifesto. Otherwise, if you carry a foolish majority, don't expect people to follow that foolish majority, because it has nothing to show, nothing to take home. If they ask you, what are you going to do with, okay, people are crying of hunger, what are you going to do to alleviate this hunger situation? You have to give us.
Put yourself together and
excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
I am trying to talk as a politician. What you should go after is not numbers. It is the ideas, political ideas that can affect change, not numbers. Now, let me come to the numbers. I want to remind you that in this country, so many attempts at having coalitions have failed for a very obvious reason. Among the parties you call opposition parties are CPDM satellite parties. So each time we come up with an idea to form a coalition, they come in and make sure that as a point of duty, that coalition explodes at the vital moment. So it's no need for us to go and waste our precious time forming a coalition that you know will never go to anywhere. If you are living in this country, you understand what I mean. We have parties of the presidential majority. We have others that don't even declare, but they are there. So please, our solution is to take the bull by the horn.
Senior Barrister, this is not the topic for today.
No, I was answering him, sir.
Our topic is the crossroads. Now, I want us to look at what is happening when we say crossroads. It is to some extent confused. For some time, we heard about the Swiss talks. And today, almost everybody is talking about the Canadian CDN. Almost everybody, there is a lot of confusion. These persons are saying that no, Canada is a failure, but we actually do not know what Canada is all about. Some people say it's a government-sponsored something. Others say, okay, the Ghana something. Almost everybody wants negotiation, dialogue, but nobody wants to endorse any move that seeks to bring everybody on board.
Thank you, Mr. Kum. You see, before you even go to look at those moves, as you call them, what have we obtained? What has been obtained on the field? After 6 years of warring, what have we got? The first thing that we can say objectively that has been obtained after this period of fighting is increased love among Cameroonians. This is something that nobody expected. In fact, because of the war, I don't know whether you can count the number of Southern Cameroonians who have moved into the Francophone towns and cities and are living there peacefully, accepted by their brothers, and there is no incident. This is a display of both hospitality and love. Nobody expected that would happen. In fact, some warmongers thought that they were going to be sent away so that more confusion will be caused. They are disappointed. That is the first thing that I think has been obtained. They have those who started the war thought that they are going to divide us, but they have instead increased the love we have for each other. Now, there's another important thing that we have obtained. The awareness. Mm-hmm. The awareness. When this thing started, how many Southern Cameroonians could tell you what happened in 1961? Today, almost everybody will tell you the history, the true history of Southern Cameroon. In fact, it has opened people's eyes. We now know what happened and where things went wrong. And that is the reason why everybody is calling for negotiations, that the right solution should be applied to the right problems. So there is this awareness that this conflict has brought. And I think it's a plus because, like somebody said, you cannot know where you are going until you know where you're coming from. So if we know that something went wrong and we want to find a place where we are going to, we should be on a more comfortable footing than somebody who doesn't know what went wrong. Now, let's come now to the talks. I want to distance myself a bit from something that Mr. Kum said here, that the international community has not been doing anything.
You are not answering my question.
I want to. I'm asking a question.
You'll be the first to complain that some other person is taking your time. Go on.
No, I said I wanted to distance myself from, because you said they did nothing.
No. I say increasingly. I'm not saying that they did nothing. We know that the resolutions have come from the U.S. Senate.
Thank you.
Yes, I know all of that. I say increasingly. We are talking about the 6th year. I said they are growing indifference.
That growing indifference, you see, if we are talking at it in terms of what is happening in Tigray, I will agree with you.
Okay. Because
when they happen in Tigray, people rush there immediately, or what is happening in Ukraine, they fail there and they want to make sure that everything ends. In Cameroon, it's not the same ball game. Our own has taken a long time, but I think it's on a good footing.
Okay.
Because the Americans asked other countries to join them. Mm-hmm. The Swiss talks were not going to anywhere, because from all what we get as information, people who went to Switzerland instead went and carried their monies, and each person went home. They went there to collect monies and go, not to go negotiate in the people's interest. So those Swiss talks were not in the interest of the people, and the talks were not genuinely organized. People went there to take monies and close their mouths. Now, the Canadian talks, you mentioned CDM. We all saw the work that CDM did. In fact, I was talking about awareness. They are the ones who were behind, the backbone behind the awareness campaign. Now they have come up with something that some states are buying. I heard of Ireland, I heard of Germany. They are not yet in the forefront, but they are working in the background. And if these states will also come to join Canada, I think something good will come out, because we are hearing some change from Yaoundé. For the first time, they're talking about negotiations. So it is good. It's a nice thing. We go slowly like a diesel engine, but I'm sure that this diesel engine will gather steam, and very soon this conflict will be something of the past. So, Mr. Kum, I don't think that the same solution that prevails everywhere can govern our own crisis, which has a different nature. It's a crisis with interest, a lot of interest. First of all, we should understand that Cameroon is a state that many people want to see safe for business. The French one is safe, the Americans one is safe, the Chinese one is safe, the Koreans one is safe. Nobody wants trouble in Cameroon. So when you say people are indifferent, I don't agree, because the instant thing that if they come in, they will cause more trouble than they are trying to solve. Yeah, that's why they're taking their time.
Yes, but we have organizations that have written that one of the most neglected conflicts in Cameroon is in the world. In the world is what is happening in Cameroon. But my question, you are still not. We have differences anytime an initiative comes up. We have dissonance. People say we are not. This one is a government-sponsored project. This one would not work. We endorse this. We will not endorse this.
That is coming from individuals.
Yeah, but
it's coming from individuals who don't represent the entire nation.
Individuals who are leading this.
I want to invite whosoever is coming up with that type of peace initiative to go to the grassroots. Go to the grassroots and address the masses. You will get a better result than going to the diaspora intellectuals, like my good friend over there said. When they give their idea, you either follow it or you are sidelined. They don't represent us in any way. We should go to the people who can talk for themselves. We are capable of talking. The grassroots. So those initiatives are not getting a lot of success because the real people concerned are being kept aside. Let them address the people concerned, and you see whether they will not get a better solution.
Okay, Professor Elvis Ngole, we want to get to you now to look at this issue of legitimacy of leadership. Who is supposed to talk on behalf of Anglophones, the people of the Southwest and Northwest regions? Are we not at crossroads today because we actually do not trust and know who actually stands and represents the people, who can call the shots?
At the crossroads is that you are confused and you've lost your bearings and you seem to be desperate. You are at a loss for words. You know, and one of the reasons, one of the qualifiers or indicators of that state in which we find ourselves at the crossroads is that we have a false leadership. You just said, I said earlier that leadership is earned. When people arrogate to themselves for whatever reason, that because they find themselves overseas or because they can talk more than others or because they can manipulate, therefore they are leaders, usually that sort of leadership does not produce any good result. That's where we are, and that's one of the reasons why we're at the crossroads, because that false leadership is not legitimate, that false leadership is not earned, and that false leadership has misled us. But what is true leadership? True leadership is that which is legitimate. I mean, I consider the learned senior barrister Ashu as one of those who can consider themselves as a Cameroonian who has worked to earn the fact that he's in a leadership position because he has created a political party, he is the president of that political party, and is making his case logically, reasonably, as all political parties are supposed to do in a rational society, in an organized society, in a society which is law-abiding and which is founded on law. But for the others, they want to claim leadership, or they claim leadership which has no foundation, has no basis, and it is not even, you cannot find where this leadership is coming from, and that's why we are in this sort of crossroads situation. You know, I agree with Senior Barrister Ashu, what he said. You know, people have to register. Who are these people? It is you and I. It is the grassroots. It is every Cameroonian, whether you come from whatever region. You have to register because we live in a republic of laws, a republic which has decided to embrace democracy as a political option, and a democracy which is characterized by several parties in permanent or constant competition. And I think that the senior barrister Ashu has subscribed to this. He is part of this system, and I know that he is one of those who believes in peace. That is why he has been working with the likes of the CDM and so forth. I know that he has been a part of that. We're all looking for peace, but let us not look for peace, but at the same time, out of bad faith or hypocrisy, work against peace. We all know that in order to get peace, it must begin with your heart, from your heart. It must begin from your love of your fellow man. It must begin from your love of the country, of your father and mother, and that's what we call fatherland. That means peace that we want must be founded on love of your brothers and sisters, no matter who they may be and whatever region they come from, love of the land in which your father and mother gave birth to you, and whatever the characteristics of that fatherland are, and you must commit yourself to making a useful contribution to moving that fatherland forward, no matter how difficult it is. In love, of course. But what we see is that we have some persons who claim leadership which they don't have, and they are forcing that leadership and misleading everybody, and we find ourselves where we are. Look at Mr. Kum Leonard. Look at I give you indicators of the calamitous situation or this crossroads in which we find ourselves. In spite of all that has gone on in the last 6 years, no international organization in the world takes us seriously. And that includes the United Nations. No serious country in the world takes us seriously. Not even African countries. In other words, all that has happened in the last 6 years has made those Anglophones who think that it is violence, it is force, it is secession, it is killing, it is kidnappings, it is destruction, it is preventing children from going to school, that is the way. They have put us in this calamitous crossroads where, in fact, they have been wrong, and they have not realized that it is honest and humble to say you've been wrong. Look, at some point, I always thought that those who have gone through the same kind of schooling as I've gone through are people of good faith, are people of conscience, they are people of value, they are people of virtue. But what I've seen is that we've got a bunch of, we've got a category of persons who, simply because they have found themselves overseas and they are in the diaspora, they are behaving as if that is a school, that is a diploma, or that is a university degree, and therefore they know better than everybody else. The senior barrister said, as you said earlier, that, look, this situation, the Anglophone crisis, as part of a sustainable way forward or solution, we have to rely on ourselves, we have to depend on ourselves. A South African came here once and he was given all kinds of publicity. I think he was very useful in bringing about peace and reconciliation in South Africa. I've just forgotten his name. He's a resource person. And I remember one of the things he said was that if you find yourselves in a problem, don't spend your energy looking for answers elsewhere or outside. It's our problem. And that's why your theme is that Anglophones are at a crossroads. Therefore, it's us. And therefore, the solution must come from us. And as Senior Barrister Ashu said earlier, let's talk to everybody. And that includes grassroots people. The answers are there. The answers are not found in Washington or in London or in Paris or in Beijing. They are found, they are with us. And we must be able to rise up by showing that we are capable, we are conscientious, we are reasonable, we are rational, we are civilized, we are knowledgeable to find answers. Even if we make mistakes, we should be able to be honest to say this was a mistake. When I heard of my co-panelist and namesake, Mr. Elvis Njone, say earlier that, oh, the major national dialogue was nothing. Look, anyone who runs away from any form of dialogue, that person doesn't want to go forward. Mr. Njone should be reminded that 1961 in Fumban was a dialogue. 1991 tripartite was a dialogue. It's always, there's never a perfect dialogue. You know, in America's constitutional conference in 1787 was a dialogue. As long as we're human beings, we should always strive and commit ourselves to dialogue, no matter how imperfect or perfect, because we can never get to perfection, but we strive to get to it. But we cannot say that, oh, because it didn't satisfy all that we wanted, therefore that wasn't a dialogue. If you refused the dialogue, the major national dialogue in 2019, you could as well also have refused the 1961 Fumban conference, because that was also a dialogue. You could have as well also refused the 1991 tripartite, because that was also a dialogue.
But to you, please.
Dialogues.
Okay, Prof. Prof, we have to get to Dr. Wesley. Tiku, who is on standby from the United States of America through Skype. Good evening, Doctor. We're sorry to have left you waiting for so long. You joined the discussion also late. We are glad to have you. Good evening, Doctor. We're glad to have you. Can you unmute your phone or computer, please? Dr. Wesley, can you unmute your phone or computer if you are using one? Okay, we were talking about the issue of legitimacy. Let me get to Mr. Njone Elvis of PAP.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can get you now. We are glad to have you. Okay, we are glad to have you on Prime Hour for the very first time. And we're talking about the situation of Anglophones today. I will go straight to asking you, what do you think is the best sustainable way forward or out of the current impasse in which we find ourselves?
It's pretty simple. We all know what the problems are. The only problem I see why we are where we are is because Yaoundé has decided, instead of taking the right actions to address the issues as they are taking shortcuts. I've heard so many people saying that, like the Professor Ngole said, that the Anglophones were doing okay until about 6 years ago. Started having these problems among ourselves. But I differ with that. This has been going on for a long time. In fact, it has been a Cold War. The Yaoundé government has been fighting this war for the last 20 years, as I can tell. It has been done in a covert manner. And during this period, they systematically made so many Southern Cameroonians to voluntarily went into exile. And you realize that some of them finished University of Boya or high school. They did not find it a place for them to go in the French Cameroon to study, because most of the exams there were set in French, or so many of the courses where you have to understand French, you have to take them. So many Southern Cameroonians fled the country and went abroad. It is these same Southern Cameroonians who left the country and went abroad that are coming back to haunt them today. If Yaoundé want to solve the problem, they will have to go back to the root causes of the problem. Without addressing the root causes of the problem, I do not see any way out of this. We might go around, try to create the special status. I do not even see why will the Southern Cameroon be given a special status? Why will West Cameroon be given a special status? Why should East Cameroon give West Cameroon a special status? How is that even possible? As I've said before in many occasions, it's not an Afro problem. It's not a Francophone problem. It's not a regional problem. It is an that has to be addressed between West and East Cameroon. The two sides has to sit together. They got to sit together and decide what future they want for these two territories. We understand that we came together in 1961. That is true. But the terms of the agreement in which the two territories came together was violated. As Professor Ngole have said many times, that the people of the Southern Cameroonians voted freely during the referendum to change the state from the Federal Republic to the unitary state. But I keep asking myself each time I hear him say that is, can you take the population of Douala and put them to vote against the population of Tico? What would the result be if it was not already certain? It was already certain that the election was going to go in favor of French Cameroon. So by bringing the majority of French Cameroon population to vote to decide if they have to change the form of the state was wrong. Because even if all Southern Cameroonians voted no in that referendum, the result will still be the same. So we cannot take the referendum as a benchmark to say the Southern Cameroonians decided to terminate the federation. We have to go back to the root causes. Anything short of that only delay the inevitable. There might be some peace on the ground, maybe some areas may be peaceful, some are not. But at the end of the day, this issue is a matter of ideology. It is in the heart of the people. You cannot kill them with guns. You cannot bribe your way through it. You must address the root causes of the problem. The professor also said that the international community has not been paying attention. I defy that also. Because if you look at it carefully, the international community, despite the fact that they have decided to take an observer status, they have advised the Cameroon government in many cases that they should organize a dialogue without any precondition. They should address the root causes. They have said the special status is not enough, doesn't even come close. So I'm not going to sit here and define what the outcome or whatever negotiation is going to be, but it has to start. It has to be genuine. It has to address the root causes of the problem, which is the problem of the state of West Cameroon and the state of East Cameroon, or Southern Cameroon, or the Republic of Cameroon. It doesn't matter what name you call it. The two sides have to sit together. It's not an issue of talking to one person or two people. No, it's about bringing together the two sides to sit together and decide how they want to force a future for themselves.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wesley. Mr. Njone Elvis, we were talking about an issue of legitimacy as to who has the right, or yes, who has the capacity or credibility to talk on behalf of the people. Are we not also missing out of that where there is no longer great respect for our traditional authority, who are the traditional leaders of the land? Our political elites themselves, to some extent, they are not respected. You guys are there talking on behalf of the PAP. Are you, who should actually speak for the people, or who actually represents the interest of the people today? Our political elites themselves.
Okay, Mr. Kum, thank you for that question. You know, it's rather unfortunate that when we come to a platform like this and on a very pertinent issue like this one, like the topic you have for us this evening, it doesn't just suffice to sit, hide our political caskets and want to say things that do not actually tie. I said before I answer your question, Mr. Kum, I said one thing and I will reiterate it again. When I say that the government has not done anything, I will say it again over and over again, because you know, Mr. Kum Leonard, when the Anglophone crisis started, or when it came to the limelight in 2016, because it has always been there from time immemorial, and then maybe the regime in place decides to form, for instance, a bilingualism commission. I don't know if the professor here or those of you with you in the studio can tell us in what way the bilingualism commission is aiding in resolving the Anglophone crisis in this country. When they decide, for instance, and they create and they talk about a special status, just like my brother was just asking a few minutes, Dr. Wesley, for instance, I don't understand who is handing over a special status to who, when we know that these two states came together as two equals, and one person stands up today to say he's giving you a special status. I don't understand under what grounds. We talk to the original leaders that have been put in place. Yes, they have been put in place, but we still have governors and DOs and LDOs. So at the end of the day, who commands in the regions? That's why I say that at the level of PAP, we believe that government has not done anything. Why? Because they have done certain things, but doing them in the wrong direction. The professor said something which is really important. He said there is never any perfect dialogue. It is not because we don't have a perfect dialogue that we should organize one the wrong way, because there is never a perfect dialogue. We should at least try to organize something that has a semblance of a reality in it, that can cause people to want to get the feeling that there is something genuine. I always say, for instance, that on the issue of dialogue, when there was a time here when it was rumored that there was some sort of dialogue or negotiation at the background going on between the regime in Yaoundé and the Sissoco Ayuk-Tabe and the others, we came out to appreciate, to encourage that it should move on. But it was the same regime that said they cannot dialogue with terrorists and all whatnot. So the idea here is that the government has done so many things, but doing so many things the wrong way, and that's why we call them window dressings, taking decisions that do not actually answer to the aspirations of the people. Now, to come back to your question as to who is legitimate when it comes to talking to the people, we believe at the level of the PAP that no matter what happens, we must always go back to the grassroots. You know, when the crisis simply started, initially the people of the Northwest and the Southwest got carried away by the ideas that were sold to them by our own very brothers in the diaspora. And of course, several different names started emerging from different levels. And then, of course, let me say, it went up to Sissoco Ayuk-Tabe. Many at that time saw him as a leader, but of course we know within their own confines, they fell out, and today we have just so many of them, and you don't even know who is who again. So at the end of the day, I want to think that if we are talking about legitimacy here, there is a need to go back to the grassroots. The people should be the ones to define exactly who they think they can have confidence or trust in as a leader of theirs. You have mentioned the idea of our traditional rulers. Our traditional rulers, they are no longer trusted by the people too. Why? Many of them no longer play the role of the father that they used to play in our local communities that we used to know. Many of them have become politicians. They have taken partisan stance, such that even when there is a problem within a community, they start judging you based on which political casket you hold and all, and that is why many of them have lost respect within the community. So I want to think that if people, if we want to talk about legitimacy here, there is a need that the grassroots be given the room to be able to express themselves. And that's why I also castigated the idea of Yaoundé sending ministers who end around Yaoundé, Bamenda and Boya, and talk with a few people, and then they come out to draw conclusions. We have seen Mr. Kum on several occasions when they have declared to us that peace has returned to the regions and all not, when at the same time, till today, 6 years after, we know that ghost towns are still very, very effective, and people cannot dare go against that. So what we are saying here is that Yaoundé per se, as we are talking, there is a room, there is a possibility that Yaoundé could still go down to the grassroots. There should be some sort of, let me say, a referendum back there, where the masses can actually be able to can be given the room to express themselves and actually say exactly what their problems are, and from there we can know exactly what they want. We must not even have a particular person as a spokesman who talks for all. If we are honest to ourselves, I want to repeat on the idea of honesty. I've been repeating this word since we began here, Mr. Kum, and I will insist on it. It is often...
Okay, Mr. Njone, we have just 3 minutes. We have just 3 more minutes, and we have Senior Barrister who has to talk. And you have to talk also. Yes, but I really wanted us to clarify a point here. I will not want the audience to go with the notion that I organized a forum and then I said that East Cameroon decided for West Cameroon, because I think it is a government, and in that government we have Anglophones and Francophones. It is an issue of the government and not East Cameroon, like some persons are putting there. I don't want tomorrow to be held accountable. We are taking exception to those declarations. It is the government of Cameroon that is implementing its policies. The policies of the government may not be nice, or they may be good, but I will not want to give that impression that from this platform we endorsed a position that it was East Cameroon that is giving a special status. Because during the major national dialogue, we had so many Anglophones who were there. So it was not an issue of East Cameroon deciding that we are giving you a special status. Anglophones and Francophones were there. Yes, we are talking about this issue of legitimacy. How do we get the leaders, the genuine leaders of the Northwest and Southwest PAP seemingly is not seeing themselves as the leaders. They say a referendum should be organized before they know who the true leaders of the people are. Yeah.
You see, as it stands, if you were to ask me to pinpoint a leader of the set struggle, I don't know who to call.
No, I'm talking about Anglophones. I'm not talking about struggles. I'm talking about Anglophones today.
It's the same thing, because if we are talking about the situation, most of us were looking up to those in the diaspora. But truth be told, whether I would like it or not, at least as far as I'm concerned, they are inconsequential. If we want to solve a problem, we'll come back home. The government did something, and the government can still do that. The parliamentarians and the senators, I know those are the categories of persons most persons do not want to hear, were elected by the people, particularly the parliamentarians. So if we want to get true leaders, this same category of persons, and of course the elite, should be sent back to their various regions to go and concert and come up with a constituted body. Because like Senior Barrister Ashu said, if these guys, unfortunately, most times when some of these elites touch down at the level of the regions, I don't know whether it's fear or whatsoever, immediately they round off with their meetings, they kick off for Yaoundé. Most of the hardly spend the night in either Abuja or Bamenda. But since the head of state has started talking of negotiation, I think, no, what I'm saying is that they should go back to the grassroots, right? And constitute a team from base that they should propose to Yaoundé. Because at the end of the day, if we think that, because these persons who find themselves in the diaspora, like Minister Ngole said a while ago, this category of persons who find themselves in the diaspora, they feel that they are the know-all. They feel that because they've interacted with the international community, they know more than any other person. So the various factions, the elites, the parliamentarians and the senators should be sent back to the base and constitute a well-constituted body, going through all the nooks and crannies of the various regions and constitute a body that will represent them in any dialogue that will come up.
Okay, we talk about legitimacy today. Who should speak on behalf of the Anglophones?
Thank you, sir. Legitimacy comes from the people.
Yes.
And that only comes through elections. And elections are conducted by political parties. So there is no other definition. The people in the diaspora cannot be called politicians, they're activists. So if they want to be politicians, let them come back home and join the political parties or create theirs. If they cannot do that, then I'm sorry, they are not leaders. The leaders are right here. They are not elites, they are politicians, and let the politicians go down to the fields with their plans of action and tell the people what they can do to better their daily living.
Okay, Dr. Wesley, we have just 2 minutes maximum for you because we are out of time. How do we get genuine leaders of the people of the Northwest and Southwest region who can forge a way out of the current impasse in which we find ourselves?
That is a very complicated question, Mr. Leo. And I do not think is something that you can just point to one person and say this is the leader. Because one of the reasons why the international community has taken the observer status is because of the disunity within the Southern Cameroonians themselves. And the international community will only come in to intervene and to do something if the Southern Cameroonians can come together and agree on what exactly they want. Right now we have many voices, and I think the only way you can able to answer the question of who is a genuine leader or not, because the issue is that when you negotiate with one, the other will come and say, okay, you have to negotiate with us. So only a united front, that includes even the people in the home front, to decide exactly what they want for themselves and for the future of their children. And then that is the only time the international community can come in to see how they can able to put sense into the government in Yaoundé to see that they can come up with something genuine that can be acceptable to the people of Southern Cameroon. But at the end of the day, the first thing first you have to do, without answering the question of which is a genuine leader, there is no one leader. All the Southern Cameroonians are involved in this, and they all have a stake in it. So for a start, the government should begin by releasing all those who were wrongfully arrested when the crisis began, because despite the fact we keep pointing fingers to the voices in the bushes and to those in the diaspora, we fail to understand that when the people came out to demonstrate in peace, it was the Yaoundé government that started the violence, that led the people to take up arms, and then we find ourselves where we are. So they should release all the prisoners from the prison, and to start with Siseko Ayub Tabe in Yaoundé, and all those. There are many people in prison who have been there for so long that they haven't even gone through and waited. They haven't gone through the trial. They have not been sentenced. They are just there. Release the people, and then organize a dialogue or a negotiation, as you can call it, in a neutral ground that will give the all those who are concerned some safety,
thank you,
so that they will not be arrested and nothing will happen to them.
Thank you, Dr. Wesley. Thank you very much. We are talking about Anglophones and the people of the Southwest and Northwest regions. You consistently are talking about the Southern Cameroonians and already giving conditions that they should be on a neutral ground. And we say the international community says discussions or dialogue should be without conditions. But yeah, so you are already giving preconditions that it must be on a neutral ground. So I don't know on what platform you are talking. Professor Elvis Ngole, we are glad to have had you this evening with us. Thank you for accepting our invitation. You are talking. Professor Elvis Ngole, we are glad to have had you this evening with us. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
It's always a pleasure, but just add that no sustainable way forward can take place if we don't add that there is a sovereign state of Cameroon recognized by international law, by the United Nations, by the international community. No sustainable solution or way forward can come about if we ignore, or if we spend time blaming, or if we think that there is something wrong with that. The sovereignty of the Republic of Cameroon is a reality in law, in politics, and for that to change, it's only the people of Cameroon that can change it. But for now, that's a reality, it's a fact, and for us to find a sustainable way forward, we have to begin by recognizing that reality, and to be able to, in all love, in all patriotism, in all respect, work with that sovereign state, of which we are all a part, by the way, because we are all citizens, and make sure that in respect of the laws and the Constitution, we work out our differences, our grievances. But if we try to make as if the state doesn't exist, simply because we don't like what it is, the international community will never take us seriously. Don't forget, we are looking for a sustainable way forward. And a sustainable way forward cannot be achieved without the sovereign state of Cameroon, of which we are all a part. And the problems will find their solution sustainably with the sovereign state of Cameroon and in the sovereign state of Cameroon. And I believe that that is where the international community stands. You just heard what the diplomatic community said during the New Year wishes. They appreciated, they encouraged, and they asked the president to continue with the options of his domestic and internal policies. I think this is good. This is the position of the international community as was expressed by the diplomatic committee a few days ago. Let us not fool ourselves. We cannot wish away our nation, our republic, our state, because it is sovereign, it is recognized by international law, and there is nothing. I mean, we can have all the grievances, but those grievances can only be solved and can only find sustainable
Prof, thank you very much.
Solutions within that framework.
Prof,
and so I hope that in our logic, in our own rationality, we will not shy away from the fact that we are part of a sovereign Cameroon, and that sovereignty, we are part of it, and we have to.
Okay, Prof, thank you very much. Njone Elvis, PAP. We are also glad you accepted to be part of this edition of the program. Elvis, please make it short.
It's taking time to come on.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. It was a pleasure for me to be here. country, we must learn to collaborate, we must learn to accommodate, we must learn to compromise, Mr. Liu. We must learn to go for some sort of mutual consent. And of course, we are calling on all Cameroonians, and especially the youth particularly, to be able to register on the electoral list and vote in the upcoming elections. And just to rectify again, Mr. Liu, that the point here is not about East Cameroon granting any form of special state to the West Cameroon, but that the decision, one of the outcomes, the resolutions of the major national dialogue of a special status was never a solution to the problem. And of course, a special status we know even extends to other regions and not just even just the Northwest and South as it was stipulated in that same major national dialogue. So I think that is where I will end for today. And I say it was a pleasure for me being on your platform. Thank you.
The Southwest Regional President of, I don't know whether it's regional or national president of the Southwest Youth League. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Mr. Leo, and I wish to use this opportunity to let you know that at the level of the Southwest Youth League, we are championing a campaign for effective youth registration on the electoral calendar, because if we keep running away from politics, politics will deal with us. So we have to get the youths registered on the electoral calendar, so that come subsequent elections, we should actively take part so that our voices will be heard and will be part of the decision-making processes.
Okay, thank you too, Prof, for Senior Barrister, for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. I want to call on all Cameroonians to remember that the traditional authorities are the most respected in our land. Let us respect our traditional authorities. And in this light, I'm calling on whosoever is keeping the phone of Bambaland, please release this man. We should stop desecrating our traditional authorities. Thank you.
We also want to thank the production team. Thank you, Eli and Desmond, and to all of you who took time off to watch this edition of the program. We say thank you to all of you. We are giving you another rendezvous tomorrow on Prime Hour. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.